guys, Meredith Gorman here, and are you still not subscribed to Matt's channel? Well, if you're not, hit the subscribe button because he's giving out free picks each and every week. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
UFC Vegas 92 back at the Apex for Barbosa versus Murphy. Random main event. Should be a good matchup stylistically. Interesting to see how this one goes. We'll talk the fight. We'll talk the main card. Like usual, provide free picks, leans, price talk, value, and what to avoid. Not a great card. We're used to that for the Apex. Sometimes they do surprise us though. Maybe the fights and matchups don't look great on paper, however turn out to be decent cards. Systemsportscapping.com is the website, or link.me/systemcapping. All links there, a little more available to you. If you want to beat sportsbooks long term, guys, we do have client packages available. All sports packages, UFC packages, whatever you like, it's over there on the website. We got my resume over there, client comments, records, and more. If you're watching on YouTube, shout out to you guys. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get podcasts, thanks to you as well, getting a lot more audio listeners. We will continue to do video. Video upgrades will be coming soon. I'll be moving into a new place. I'll have a new office, etc. So looking forward to that. Let's do a UFC St. Louis recap. Let's do a recap here. It was a 1-1 card for myself and clients. No profit, ending the long profitable streak there. And it was due to a big upset with Rebecca. Right? It's funny. I like Giuseppe. Giuseppe's fight got canceled against Gordon. And I really liked Giuseppe in that fight. I was going to parlay him with Woodson. He would have got that at plus money. I settled, put Rebecca in there, thinking it was going to be pretty much for sure win. And it looked great in the first round, right? First round, he looked great. Almost finishing Ferreira. And then the cardio. And then the headbutt. He got headbutted and his eye went shut. So some bad luck there. But Ferreira used his veteran experience. I got to tip my cap to Ferreira. Was able to take the big shots from Rebecca and win the fight. So I just got to tip my cap to Ferreira there. Rebecca gets his first loss. Again, looked great in the first round. Cardio issues. Got headbutted. His eye closed. Bad luck there. We hit Woodson there on the other side of the parlay, but it did not matter. Straight bet, we were on Buckley. Buckley got the win there. I did give it out for you guys last week as well. I was on him as a straight up bet. Decent price, minus 130, if I recall. Not a bad price fighting at home, right? Definitely fighting a tough guy. I was a little worried about it. I couldn't even get to a full unit due to that. Due to this going to be probably his toughest test yet. But his opponent was coming down in weight. You saw that later in the fight. It did affect him. We know Buckley's cardio is great. And just loved his movement. Loved the takedowns, right? Takedowns was the difference. His opponent takedown defense was not good. And it showed, right? Buckley was able to take him down multiple times throughout the fight. Didn't control him there for long periods, but was able to use the takedowns due to his speed and movement. So, shout out to Buckley. Love to see him against a very, like a guy like Gilbert Burns, who he called out. That would be a great fight. That's a big step up, in my opinion. But let's see if he has it. Let's see if he has what it takes to be a top 5 guy in this division. And Derek Lewis, hats off to him finding the KO, his one path, right? I did think he lost, both first and second round. I think his opponent was able to get the fight down to the ground, but not keep him there. So Lewis did good there. But he's always live for the KO, right? He's just always live for that KO, and he was able to find it. I think it was a little later, the third round. I definitely didn't like that fight to go the distance. That was my favorite play, but you did have to pay up for that. I stayed away from the fight, but Lewis by KO probably would have been the smartest play because I do think that was his only path of winning the fight. Let's do a UFC record update here. UFC record update, 18-2 UFC pay-per-view run. 90%, 29-12, all cards run, 71%. That's long term now, guys. 67%, 2 fight parlays. That's longer term, over a year. PGA, back-to-back profitable events in the PGA prop market. Outright winner last week with Rory. plus 750. Nice prop market as well. 5 outrights last 10 weeks, 66% matchups on the year. 26 and 10 free bets over a year and 5 months now, guys. 73%. One pending this week. NBA, no bets last week. Still 8 and 2. NHL, tough beat with Carolina last week in Game 3. Perfect spot. Can't ask for a better spot for Carolina. Then they end up winning the two Game 4 and 5. Right? You expect them to win that Game 3. Then they ended up winning a tougher spot, in my opinion, down 3-0. Right? Odds of coming back down 3-0 is very low. They win that game. Then they go to New York, win the next game. NHL's been tough right now to call. It's been very up and down in the playoffs with no profit in single games. 2-0 in the future market, though. Let's get right into this card. Let's get right into the card, guys. Shop around for best prices. Have access to multiple sports books. Best way to beat them long term. Main event here. Barbosa plus 125 versus Murphy minus 150. Interesting main event. Of course, random, but we're used to that for these APEC cards. Not an easy fight to handicap either. I spent a lot of time looking over this fight. It's a step up for Murphy, right? Big step up, in my opinion. Undefeated Murphy, I do have to mention. Now, these wins just are against lower level guys, right? So it is kind of hard to determine how good he is. And in some of those fights, especially recently, he hasn't looked great. Ricardo Ramos, Andrade, Americani, Santos, Kulaba, just low-level guys to mid-tier at best. We know Barbosa, veteran, has been in there with the best, has fought 5 rounds many times. Murphy hasn't. That's one knock there. After back-to-back losses against Giga and Mitchell, Bryce Mitchell, not a good matchup for Barbosa. He just got taken down throughout the fight. He won back-to-back fights. Nice bounce back over decent, solid guys too, right? Billy Q, mid-tier guy, and Yusuf as well, mid-tier guy. So good wins back-to-back for Barbosa. And Murphy, it's tough to say where he is in the tiers. I always like to stress tier low, mid-tier, and high tier, top of the tier division. It's hard to say where Murphy is. Definitely not low tier. I have him more in the mid-tier with that Billy Q and the Yusuf type of fighter. Murphy probably would beat Billy Q. Yusuf. Not too sure. If you look at the stats here, volume is fairly similar, right? Murphy is a bit lower, under 4 significant strikes, and isn't known to throw a ton if you watch his fights. Does have some power in his hands and is more calculated with fairly solid defense. Both guys don't wrestle, so we should see this on the feet for the most part. You can see Murphy maybe trying to sneak in a takedown. Barbosa, fairly good takedown defense, especially if the guy's not really known for his wrestling. There's a fight that won't get my clients money. Murphy hasn't fought at this level, main event spot, and first 5-round fight. Barbosa, 38, a bit concerning, even though he looks like he's 25 with that body. Keeps great care of himself. It's just, what does he still have left? We proved that he does have stuff left in his last 2 fights. So I can't write off Barbosa. And if you're giving me plus money on Barbosa, who's been there, done that, still fighting well at his age, I would have to lean his way. If I were to bet this fight, is this going to get my clients money? Probably not. If it did, it would be for a very small unit. Murphy, again, undefeated. And when you look at strength of schedule and resume differences, it's night and day difference. I get it. But, Murphy could only fight who he's put in front of, right? you do got to mention that. And a couple of those fights didn't look spectacular, but did enough to win. So you could see that here again, right? So I can't be all sold in on Barbosa due to a few concerns. But at plus 125, it's fairly intriguing. Been there, done that type of fighter. Again, the concern with being 38 and how good really is Murphy. So not going to get my clients money, but lean is going to be Barbosa due to the plus money. There is some value there. Co-main, Chaos Williams, minus 138 versus Harris, plus 110. This is a good fight. Interesting one here. I like the matchup. Harris is a guy I made a ton of money on coming into the UFC because the books didn't know who he was. and he was always priced as underdog. So I continued to bet Harris and continued to cash. Then he fought Rachmanov, and I didn't bet him against him, but that was obviously going to be a loss, right, against Rachmanov. Rachmanov's probably going to be a future champion. Harris is not at that level. After that loss, though, right, Harris bounced back, wins over Jared Gooden and Jeremiah Wells. So decent wins, right? Low to mid-tier would be probably pushing it, but low to mid-tier guys, decent, solid wins. Harris was able to win those and uses takedowns mainly. Williams is a guy who has a ton of power, right? Has some volume as well. Great boxer, can throw some kicks as well, but mainly a boxing stance. And he's not obviously a wrestler or grappler, but he does have some fairly good takedown defense at 80%. Panero is the only guy to actually take him down. So that's something to keep in mind here. And you know what Harris's past is going to be? Want to get this fight down to the ground where he has a wrestling and grappling advantage, right? So you're going to look at Harris to try to get this fight down to the ground. Will Williams be able to keep it standing where he's going to have the advantage? And that's how this fight's going to play out, guys, right? So if you're betting Harris at a little tiny value, plus 110, if you shop around, get a better price, I think there's more value. You're going to hope he gets his fight down to the ground and not just stand and bang with, Williams, who has a ton of power. So you're banking on Harris getting this fight down to the ground. And it's hard to confirm that, right? Because Williams, that 80% takedown defense, sure, it looks good, but let's look at his opponents. None of them are wrestlers. Even though maybe some of them have tried to take him down because they are worried about standing and banging with him, none really had the wrestling capability of doing so. So keep that in mind. Harris looks to continue to chain wrestle, get the fight down to the ground where he has great submissions and grappling, right? So yes, again, Harris at plus money, I always look at that when I see Harris at plus money. It always catches your eye. But the question is, can he get Williams down to the ground? We know Williams trained all training camp, and he's been training probably for years and years with his takedown defense because he knows that's what guys are going to want to do. You're not going to want to stand and bang with Chaos Williams for 3 rounds. It's not a smart game plan. So is Harris going to get the fight down to the ground? That's the question here, right? That's what you're banking on, if he's going to get the fight down to the ground. So a little value with Harris. Shop around. If you get a better price than plus 110, I think maybe smaller unit on Harris due to the value. But yeah, Harris does have that grappling, wrestling advantage. Williams has the striking and power advantage. So pick your poison. Grimbo minus 138 versus Baram plus 110. One guy that has a ton of heart. One guy I love to look at and back. He has the grind. He has the passion as Grimbo. We all know his story, right? I have to say it every time he fights. The Rock kind of supporting him, right? Bought him a house. Dana White's on his back. Good story behind him, right? He fights. If you bet on him, he's going to fight for your money, right? Maybe raw at times. Maybe he doesn't have the best skill, but he goes in there. Great cardio. Good takedowns. His striking shows power. Just is not technical, right? His opponent, very good grappling, right? Champion in the gi. I think also champion also, but not at black belt. I think it was at blue belt. So keep that in mind. Grimbo knows this. He's done his homework. I watched his interview saying, I know he's a good grappler, but he won at blue belt. He called them out, Grimbo, right? And Grimbo is improving his grappling, right? And his wrestling is solid. He averages over 3 takedowns per fight. So I do think he can get this fight down to the ground, but, it could be a little dangerous with Baramaj's takedowns, right? So, his submission. So keep that in mind, right? Grimbo is fighting for his coach's mother. His coach's mother just died this week. He brought that up. He started crying in his interview, and he dedicated this fight to his coach's mother. It's something I like. It's not something about, I'm going to bet it just because of that. But it's a little thing that I would add to the bet, right? So I'm going to have to look his way here. Another reason, he has a big cardio advantage here. Baram, we've seen multiple times gas out later in this fight. His path is to get a submission early in this fight. Could it happen? Sure. But I have that at lower odds. I think Grimbo wins this fight later down the stretch. Could also maybe hurt him on the feet. He did in his last fight against Peter Rodriguez. Showed some nice power there. So look at Grimbo here. I think he could get the job done. It's a decent price. And again, his opponent is a 1 to 2 round fighter. So keep that in mind. Also, one last thing. I almost forgot. I have a note here. Hasn't fought for 2 years, Barbosa. Keep that in mind. Hasn't fought for 2 years. I think he had an injury to his ear, and I don't know what the main reason is, but he hasn't fought for 2 years, so that's another point here. Yanez, minus 350 versus Salvador, plus 275. It looks like the UFC is just pulling the brakes on Yanez and saying, don't fight the top guys. Go back down to mid-tier to low-tier guys. That's what it's looking like with this matchup. Or is it just UFC wants to build them back up? And that's what I think it is here, right? Yanez was fighting guys like Jonathan Martinez, who just fought Aldo in a big spot, and then Rob Font, right? Both of those fights, TKOs. A little worrying about that. One was leg kicks, though, so not too much damage there. But the Font finish was ugly. So that could hurt someone's career. Keep that in mind. But Salvador 0-2 in the UFC. Seems like they're just throwing Yanez a softball here, guys. Right? Salvador loses. He's also going up in weight from 125. Right? This is a classic spot of Yanez just getting back on track in the win column. If he loses this fight, I'll be shocked, to be honest. And minus 350, I thought it would be worse. I thought it would be worse than this. So I'm not going to say there's value at minus 350. There's never really value at minus 350. But I think Yanez wins this fight. If you want to improve it, maybe look at the finish prop. He could find a TKO, KO, maybe even a submission as well. But Yanez should win this fight. He's going to fit in my client card somehow this weekend, even 2-5 parlay. Maybe I'll look at a finish prop. Yanez should get back on track. Classic UFC spot to get the guy back on track. And a fight to open up the main card, right? Yes, it is. Angela Hill, minus 138 versus Panero, plus 110. You know, it's a fairly ugly low-tier, mid-tier women's MMA fight that I don't like usually to bet on, right? When you look at Hill's record, you see 16-13. It's a little misleading. A lot of those fights were split decisions. She could have won some of those fights. I think she's better than that record, so don't get that fooled, right? And she's fought some of the best girls. Her resume is very impressive, especially compared to Panero, right? Resume difference can't compare. Hill, though, 39, guys. End of her career, which is worth mentioning here. Panero has a great start to the UFC, right? Great start, winning 3 in a row. Marquez, Hughes, and Watterson was her biggest win. Then she moved up a little bit in class, fought Ribes, lost that fight by TKO. That was concerning. I do believe Panero's path will be to get this fight down to the ground. Right, her striking isn't great, low volume, but averages 2 takedowns per fight. I think that will be her path. Hill's takedown defense is fairly solid, 75%. So that battle will be interesting to see if Panero's trying to get this fight down to the ground. I think Hill would out volume. If this stays on the feet for 3 rounds, Hill's going to not dominate, but out volume her over 5 significant strikes per fight per round. So keep that in mind. Per minute. Sorry. Keep that in mind. Hill does have that volume advantage, a veteran experience. Panero is going to want to get the fight down to the ground. She can. I think if I had to bet this fight gun to the head, I would take Panero just due to plus money. But I don't usually bet these fights for clients or personally myself. If I do, it's like a small unit. But I usually stay away from women's MMA, mid-tier, low-tier fights. And if I do bet them, most of the time it's going to be the plus money, or if I get some information where I like a decent favorite. In this one, you know, it's plus money or pass for me. That will do it, guys. That will do it. Another fight night card. We got some big cards in June, guys. Big cards in June. Looking forward to that. This card, I'm not going to have a ton of volume, but I'll have some bets like usual. Like I always say, guys, bet smart and know your limits. Enjoy this card.